For most of the 2010s, Apple was not just successful, it was dominant. At its peak, it became the first company in history to reach a $3 trillion market value. For years, Apple stock seemed almost untouchable, rising on the back of the iPhone's global grip on communication, entertainment, and work. But over the last 2 years, that momentum has quietly disappeared. While companies tied to artificial intelligence, such as Microsoft and Nvidia, have surged dramatically, Apple stock has largely stalled. The market is not panicking, but it is clearly sending a signal. Investors no longer see Apple as the company that owns the future. This matters because stock prices aren't just a scoreboard for how much money a company made last quarter. They're basically a bet on the future. That's why Nvidia has been exploding. It's not because people suddenly care about graphics cards again. It's because every major AI system needs insane computing power, and Nvidia's chips are basically the engine behind the entire AI boom. Microsoft is the same story. They didn't come back because Windows got cooler. They surged because they tied themselves to OpenAI and started building AI into everything people already use: Word, Outlook, Teams. Microsoft isn't just selling software anymore. It's selling intelligence. And then there's Apple. They still print money. But Wall Street doesn't value Apple like an AI company. It values Apple like a hardware company that sells upgrades. And in a world where value is shifting from devices to intelligence, that's a risky position. Because Apple's dominance was never just about having a good phone. It was about controlling the interface the way humans interact with technology. The iPhone didn't win because it had the best specs. It won because it made tech feel natural. Touch the screen, swipe around, download apps, suddenly everything made sense. Apple didn't just sell a product, they changed behavior. They became the gateway to modern life. But that gateway depended on one assumption: the screen would always be the main interface. And right now, that assumption is breaking. Because the next interface isn't the screen, it's the conversation. Today, millions of people don't even start with Google anymore. They start with ChatGPT. And that sounds small, but it's actually a massive shift. People aren't navigating through apps the way they used to. They're not opening Notes, then Safari, then Gmail, just to get one simple thing done. Instead, they type one sentence, and the AI just does it. Microsoft saw this coming early. They've been stuffing AI into everything. Google is sprinting to catch up with Gemini because they know what's at stake. Meanwhile, Apple's assistant, Siri, still feels like it's trapped in 2014. It struggles with follow-ups, and half the time it responds like it didn't even understand the question. Tim Cook has been talking about AI for years, saying Apple sees it as one of the most profound technologies of our time. And more recently, Cook said Apple has been working on generative AI for years. But here's the issue. While Apple was being careful, Microsoft and Google were shipping products. They were taking risks, improving in public, and letting users build new habits around AI. Apple's approach has basically been stay quiet, move slow, and don't break the brand. Even Apple's leadership has indirectly admitted how big this shift is. Craig Federighi, Apple's software chief, has openly talked about how machine learning and AI are becoming deeply integrated into Apple's products. And that's Apple's core mindset right there. Privacy first, control first, slow rollout. The problem is AI is becoming the new interface, whether Apple likes it or not. Once users realize they can control their phone more effectively by talking to an AI than by tapping through menus and apps, the operating system starts to matter less. The app icons start to matter less. The whole traditional smartphone experience starts to feel outdated, and that's a terrifying problem for Apple. But if AI becomes the new front door to technology, Apple risks getting bypassed. Apple's entire model is built around distribution control. The App Store isn't just a store, it's a gate. Apple decides what gets in, how it gets ranked, what it costs, and what percentage Apple takes. That system worked because the smartphone era was basically the app era. Whoever controlled apps controlled the internet. But AI changes the economics of that entire world. AI doesn't behave like an app you download once and use forever. It behaves like a service that gets smarter over time, and it gets expensive fast. Running large AI models costs real money every time someone asks a question. That means the winners aren't the companies with the best-looking hardware. They're the companies that can afford the compute, own the data, and build the distribution channels that keep people inside their system. And that's where Apple looks strangely exposed. Apple's biggest advantage has always been hardware margins and brand loyalty. But in AI, the advantage is scale. Massive data centers, enterprise customers, and subscription-heavy ecosystems. Microsoft Microsoft already has that. They don't need to convince people to change habits, they just update Word, and suddenly millions of people are using AI at work without even trying. The average person might use AI for fun, like writing captions or planning a vacation, but companies are using AI to rewrite how work gets done. Customer support, marketing, this is where AI becomes sticky. Microsoft owns that world through Office and Teams. Apple barely exists in that conversation. Apple has no real enterprise productivity ecosystem the way Microsoft does. And that matters because enterprise adoption creates the strongest lock-in. If your job runs on Copilot, you don't care if Siri got slightly better this year. And there's another issue nobody talks about. Apple's incentives are conflicted. AI threatens Apple's most profitable product cycle, the iPhone upgrade loop. If AI makes older devices feel smarter and more capable for longer, fewer people upgrade. Apple needs people to keep buying new devices. So Apple is stuck. They want AI, but they don't want AI to break the business that prints money. This is why Microsoft looks so dangerous right now. They aren't trying to protect a hardware upgrade cycle. They're trying to dominate the new platform shift the way they dominated the PC era. Their AI strategy is put it everywhere, make it unavoidable. And when that happens, it doesn't matter if Apple's interface is prettier, the intelligence layer becomes the real product. Apple can still win, but they have to do something they almost never do: move fast and take risks in public. And that is not the Apple we've seen for the last 5 years. Tim Cook deserves real credit for what he's done. Under his leadership, Apple became a financial machine. He mastered the parts of business that most CEOs never fully control: supply chain dominance, manufacturing scale, insane margins, and a services ecosystem that prints recurring revenue. Apple didn't just sell iPhones. It built a system where every iPhone leads to subscriptions, App Store fees, iCloud storage, Apple Music, Apple Care, all of it. From a business standpoint, it's genius. But here's the problem. Tim Cook optimized Apple to win the last era. His Apple is built to be efficient, predictable, and safe. It's designed to avoid mistakes, protect the brand, and keep the upgrade cycle running smoothly. And that strategy works perfectly when the world is stable, when the rules of tech don't change. When the game is sell slightly better hardware every year, Apple is unbeatable. But that's not what's happening anymore. The AI revolution is a technological earthquake. It's not an extra feature you add to the iPhone. It's a shift in what computing even is. The center of power is moving away from hardware specs and toward intelligence, the ability to generate, predict, automate, and solve problems instantly. And when the ground shifts like that, the companies that win aren't the ones that are the most polished. They're the ones that move the fastest and take the biggest risks. That's why Apple looks uncomfortable right now. Apple is a company built around control. Control of the App Store, control of distribution, control of the user experience. Apple style is perfection before release. And in the AI era, waiting for perfection is the same as showing up late. Apple will keep selling millions of devices. They will keep making insane profits. But the scary part is that profitability isn't the same thing as leadership. You can be rich and still be irrelevant. That's what people don't understand. The tech graveyard is full of companies that stayed profitable for years while the future passed them by. What's changing is Apple's role. Apple used to define what technology felt like. The iPhone shaped the modern world. Now Apple risks becoming something smaller. The company that makes premium hardware for platforms controlled by someone else's intelligence. And that is what death looks like in technology. Not bankruptcy, not collapse overnight, just losing the future. Because once the world starts depending on AI assistance, whether that's Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, or whatever comes next, the company that controls that assistant controls the next era of computing. And if Apple doesn't own that layer, then Apple becomes the nicest looking doorway to a house they don't own.